Can Ethereum still hit $10,000 this market cycle? A lot of people have been sitting around watching the Ethereum price kind of slowly lag behind and say, hey, what's going on with this? Can we actually see these massive Ethereum prices that everybody's been talking about? Is $10,000 even possible? So I'm going to break that down in this video as a blockchain developer who works the Ethereum protocol on a daily basis and also an Ethereum holder myself. So before we get into that, if you're new around here, hey, I'm Gregory, and on this channel, I turn you into a blockchain master. So if that's something that you're interested in, then smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm and subscribe to this channel. And if you want to learn how to master blockchain step by step from start to finish, then head on over to dappuniversity.com/bootcamp to get started today. And as always, this is not financial advice. I'm not telling you to buy or sell Ethereum cryptocurrency based on this information. I'm not a financial advisor, and there's lots of people down in the comment section below impersonating me. They're all scammers. Just ignore them. I'll never give you my phone number or ask you to invest with me. So $10,000 per Ether is by far one of the most popular price predictions for Ethereum this market cycle. And in this video, I want to talk about whether that's realistic or not. So if you're brand new around here, as always, I'm not a big trader, not a big TA guy, but I am a developer that works with this technology, and I do like to think analytically. So I want to reason through this to see whether this is just a pipe dream or whether this is actually a realistic scenario. So I've looked at a bunch of different types of analysis on my channel. We've looked at Metcalfe's law and how it potentially correlates to the price of cryptocurrencies, how the number of active addresses correlates to an exponential relationship in the price. We can use on-chain analytics to verify this, that the number of active addresses actually is increasing on the Ethereum network, and that we're seeing that correlation play out with the price. But today I want to step through this with a different line of reasoning. I actually want to look at some past price performance for Ethereum, Bitcoin, and other assets to determine whether this is possible. This is not going to be advanced TA. I'm not going to draw a bunch of charts with fancy lines and tools, but I'm going to do some step-by-step analysis based on the price data. Okay, so we're going to build an argument here based off a set of assumptions, because that's what all of this is. You're trying to derive insights. You're trying to guess probabilities based on a set of assumptions. And then you build an argument. If that's true, then maybe this is true. Then maybe this is true. Maybe this is true. So let's start off with the givens. So first of all, if Ethereum is going to hit $10,000 per coin, then it has to roughly 4x in price from the time of recording this video. Now you might say, oh, that's not so hard. I've seen lots of other cryptos, 4x in price over the last month or two, some of these smaller cap cryptocurrencies. But the important thing you have to understand is that Ethereum has a very large market cap compared to other cryptos. It doesn't move as easily in price as compared to something like Dogecoin, for example. So it takes a lot more buying pressure to move the needle on Ethereum. And so if it's going to 4x in price, let's just assume that the entire cryptocurrency market has to quadruple in market cap. So the current cryptocurrency market cap is about $2 trillion. Time I record this video, let's just assume that it has to get to about $8 trillion. Now that's also going to assume that ETH here remains at 12% dominance, that it's going to capture 12% of the entire market as it goes up. I think it'll actually be more than that. I think that Ethereum will outperform Bitcoin. But just for a conservative estimate, let's just assume it's going to stay about the same ratio as it is now. And so the first question is, can the entire cryptocurrency market cap reach, $8 trillion? Well, let's compare that to some other things. We've got gold's market cap, which is, roughly $10 trillion, depending on, who you ask, right? And if Bitcoin is currently at about 51% dominance, then that means that, Bitcoin, if it's going to have the same market share as the entire cryptocurrency market goes up, then Bitcoin itself, sort of the digital replacement for gold, at least that's the narrative that's going for it right now, will be worth about half as much as gold at an $8 trillion market cap, at an $8 trillion cryptocurrency market cap. Bitcoin having about 4 trillion. So is it conceivable for Bitcoin to be worth half as much as all the gold? Yes, it's very conceivable considering the massive narrative that Bitcoin has going for it right now as a store of value, as we see institutional adoption of cryptocurrency. And if that's the case, then it also makes sense that Ethereum could basically go up with it. And if it does keep the same, level of market share, about 12% here, that would put Ethereum in a market cap of $1 trillion, which would be getting close to the market cap of silver right now. So is it possible for ETH to reach a similar market cap? I think it is, with everything that Ethereum does. And similarly, you have to ask yourself, with everything that Ethereum does, is it worth half as much as something like Apple, which is valued at $2 trillion? I think the answer is yes. So, in terms of valuations, that's one way to look at it. The other thing is enough buying pressure actually going to enter into this space to make this happen? Well, I do think because of institutional adoption of cryptocurrency, that can be a major catalyst for that type of money to enter into the space. Because don't forget, if cryptocurrency market's going to go up like this, if the market cap's going to increase, basically the same number of participants need to buy a lot more, or you need outside participants to come in and buy to increase that buying pressure and make the price go up. So we've seen lots of institutions come into this space. We've seen Tesla buy $1.5 billion of cryptocurrency for its balance sheet. You can see an entire list of publicly traded companies who hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet here. on CoinGecko. You can also change the URL for Ethereum as well. Now, of course, this is a much smaller list, but I do expect this to grow. So the point here is that institutions can buy a much greater size than retail investors, like people like you or I. And that can move the needle a lot faster. And if institutions are perceiving, Bitcoin to be a store of value as a hedge against the big inflation that we're seeing in the world today as a response to central banks printing money, and they've seen Bitcoin price go up like crazy, and other people, follow suit, like Tesla, for example, then it's very possible we could see the buying pressure needed to send Bitcoin to a $4 trillion market cap, the entire cryptocurrency market cap to an $8 trillion market cap, and then also Ether to a $1 trillion market cap, or $10,000 per Ether. All right, so now let's talk about how the Ether price actually moves, because this has gotten some people confused when they look at the cryptocurrency markets and say, hey, ETH has been acting like a stable coin lately, like it's not really that volatile. Okay, we just see these really slow rises in price, or maybe not much change at all. And that's got them thinking like, hey, can this actually reach 10K per coin when we see all these other smaller cap cryptocurrencies like taking off like a rocket? So you have to think about how a large market cap cryptocurrency like Ether will move right now, and also how it's moved in the past, and how other similar sized cryptocurrencies have moved in the past in these big boom and bust cycles like 2017. So, basically, think about that first assumption. Let's just say that we're in a boom and bust cycle. I think it's probably the safest assumption that history will likely rhyme, not necessarily repeat itself, but rhyme, and that we'll probably see some sort of big parabolic blow off top like we did in 2017. I think that's a safer assumption than not. So if that's the case, in 2017, we saw the Ether price go from, $300. It was doing this really boring thing, kind of like it has been doing lately. And then it, just rocketed off in price. And we saw it, basically more than 4x in a very short time period. All right. Now, Ether had a much smaller market cap back then. But, crazier things could happen. We could just see a massive parabolic blow off top happen right now. And of course, that would send, ETH up 4x in price, and it would hit roughly $10,000 per coin. Now, some people say not so fast, like ETH is a much smaller market cap cryptocurrency back then, like I was just talking about. And, it takes a lot more buying pressure for it to 4x in price like that. And that probably wouldn't happen in such a short time period. Well, then you have to ask yourself this question. What's ETH, similar in size to, as we saw back in, saw back with Bitcoin back in 2017? Well, it's closer to the market cap of what Bitcoin was back then. So what did Bitcoin do? Well, Bitcoin, it also 4x'd in price in a relatively short amount of time, but also doubled in price in a very small window. Okay, so could something like Ether double in price in a very small window if we have some massive, mania, some big euphoria where we see prices just go vertical? Well, it very realistically could happen, okay? And so a possible scenario is, we're just going to assume that we have many more months of this bull market to continue, and we see a slower rise in the Ethereum price, kind of like we saw back here. Right, we saw, maybe roughly a 50% or a 100% increase right here. And so maybe we see a 100% increase in the price of Ether today, and then a 2x from there and sort of a euphoric blow off top, peaking at it around $10,000. Or maybe we see, a smaller rise and a 2.5x or something like that, right? Those are some possible scenarios where the price action looks a little bit boring for a long time, and then something explodes, and we see this take off in a really narrow window. And so that's totally possible, and that thesis is pretty consistent with how Ether and other cryptocurrencies like it tend to move, especially in these euphoric phases. They really surprise us. They double, triple, quadruple in a very short amount of time. And that could be what we see in the coming months. And another thing to think about here is that $10,000 is a really strong psychological number. So let's say we're, reaching the end of a boom and bust cycle. We see this massive euphoric phase where prices just go vertical. There's going to be a lot of people who are chasing that $10,000 number, and a lot of people who are wanting to cash out at that number. So, if we're anywhere close to $10,000 and we're in the middle of that phase, it almost becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay. So not financial advice. All right. It's a dangerous assumption to make, but you have to keep that in mind whenever we get to that point. All right. And so all that's also based on a set of assumptions. It's based on the assumption that we are in a boom and bust cycle. All right. That we're going to see some sort of parabolic blow off top and then a massive dump after that will probably result in a bear market, sort of like when we saw last time, that's at least 1 year long. So that's an assumption. We don't know that that's actually the case. Okay. Another assumption is that the bull trend that we're in is actually going to continue, and then it's going to end in, a parabolic blow off top like we saw in the past. That's also not a guarantee. Okay. We could see prices go down from here without seeing that parabolic blow off top. So waiting for something that everybody else expects is not necessarily a guarantee for success either. So So you have to keep in your mind all these possibilities, because at the end of the day, it's really just about possibilities and which possibility is the most likely. But I want to think about this from an analytical perspective to help you break this down and make up your own mind. So another assumption is that it's actually going to be a boom and bust cycle. And there are other people who think that, well, no, it's going to be a gradual increase for a much longer time. We've talked about that on this channel quite a bit, a super cycle thesis, where some people say, hey, well, we've kind of graduated from the boom and bust cycles with cryptocurrency. We have institutional adoption. We have way better technology than we did in 2017. And cryptocurrency really is on sort of that slower grind of the Gartner hype cycle. That's basically where you see really peak inflated expectations for a brand new technology like cryptocurrency, a massive dump, and then a plateau of productivity. Some people say, hey, this is what happened in 2017. We saw this massive peak, and then a dump, and then a much slower rise. Maybe this is what we've seen with the current run up, and then we're on a much slower grind to a more up-only long-term trend. And maybe that trend has much gentler undulation, that the prices kind of go up and down, and maybe we'll see some sort of mini bear cycles, but we won't see anything quite as grotesque as what we saw in 2017, where, some cryptocurrencies lost over 90% of their value, and some never even recovered. So that also is a possible scenario, okay? And if that's the case, then the question is not if Ether is going to be worth $10,000, it's just going to be when. And so where do I fall on that side of things? I'm open-minded to this thesis, okay? So I would much rather assume that history will somewhat repeat itself. I think it's safer to assume that we're in a boom and bust cycle, because that's how you protect yourself and hedge risk. But I'm also open to the idea that we are on a much longer uptrend, and I'll be watching out for this in the coming months and reading different metrics and indicators to determine my personal strategy for when that time comes. And so that's a second path that could also take us to $10,000 per Ether. Okay, so we've seen two different analyses here. One analysis where it's a boom and bust cycle where, we have to have some parabolic blow off top, maybe in the matter of months, maybe 6 months, maybe 12 months, where that could send ETH up to $10,000, a really slow rise in price, and then boom, a major blow off top that causes us to cross that finish line. And another potential thesis that says, no, we're on a much slower grind, and eventually we're just going to reach $10,000 per Ether. It's not a question of if, it's just a question of when. So what do I think is actually possible? Well, I think either of these scenarios is possible. I'm leaning more towards scenario one. Of course, not financial advice. I'm not telling you to buy or sell Ether based on this information, but I think it's much more likely that history will rhyme a lot, because human nature doesn't really seem to change that much. And it's a much safer assumption to be prepared for that particular scenario. And in that particular scenario, I think it is possible for Ethereum to reach $10,000 per coin based on all the things that I laid out in this video. Now, the two things that could totally invalidate that assumption will be, one, we don't actually ever get the blow off top that everyone's expecting, like I was talking about earlier. Or two, we do, and it just doesn't quite reach that level. Like maybe just ETH doubles from here, and then we enter some sort of bear market. And there's also other factors, right? We could have something major happen in the global economy. We could have the stock market crash. And if that happens, then the cryptocurrency markets very likely will go down with it. We saw that last year in March of 2020. And some sort of big outside force comes in, then it's probably going to end the party early, to tell you the truth. So as always, there's no guarantees, not financial advice, but that's just my take on it. So that's all I got for today. As always, I hope you like this video. Smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. That really helps these videos out so more people can learn about blockchain. If you like these videos, you're as fascinated with this technology as I am, then how can you get your hands dirty, get started today? We can go to my YouTube homepage. You can find any of my free courses there, like Udemy courses, but they're totally free. If you like those, you want to hit the next step, or hey, maybe you want to take a master shortcut entirely, I should become a blockchain master step by step, start to finish, over at dappuniversity.com/bootcamp. All right. You don't have to be an expert to get started today. I've helped people with zero coding experience become real world blockchain developers in a matter of months. All right. So that's all I've got. Until next time, thanks for watching Dapp University.